This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to Late Boomers. Today, our special guest is entrepreneur David Osk, who is the driving force behind StatGuard Plus, a thermostat cover that's showcased in over 3,000 retail giants like Home Depot and Lowe's. He's also working on a book now called Guardians of Grit for Fathers, coming soon.
Can't wait to read that. And I'm Mary Elkins. Alongside this success, he's passionate about personal growth and the two mastermind groups he spearheads under the ISI Mastermind banner, which help people get out of isolation, overcome obstacles, and uncover their uniqueness of purpose. Plus, David composes music and sings on stages across the U.S. Welcome, David.
I'm really, really happy to be here with you ladies. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
Thanks, David. Would you tell us a little bit about your background and who or what led you to follow the path you're on today?
Yeah. So, who are you guys talking to? So, you know what? I grew up in a little town in Minnesota, actually. And I ended up moving to Nashville like a million other people do to be a famous vocalist. And so I came to Nashville in 1994. So I've been here for 30 years. So I moved here when I was 20. In fact, I'll be 50 years old on Thursday.
Happy birthday.
Congrats.
Yeah. So, but it's what's interesting is the town that I grew up in, with, you might imagine, a little town with one stoplight, about 2,500 people. You had, of course, business owners and so on, but there were a few people that stood out to me as true entrepreneurs, meaning, they had multiple revenue streams. They just seemed to kind of, be into a lot of different things. And I was so drawn to them, their personalities and kind of how they operated in life. And at the same time, I didn't really, have an understanding of, that world and, what made them tick and that kind of thing. All I knew is that when I would talk to them or be in their presence and they were talking about everything from, having rental properties to product development to, promoting, various concerts or things like that, I'm like, what kind of a person has that many irons in the fire and who do they think they are? That kind of thing. And it just seemed to really, open up my mind as to, what's possible. And so I remember when I moved to Nashville, of course, for me, music was something that was so near and dear to my heart. My mom was a music teacher. And I like to joke that we were forced, to sing when we were little. I have two older siblings, and my mom would say, "Get in the car. We're going down to the nursing home, and you're all going to sing." And so what was interesting is I realized, probably when I was 15, that I had a pretty significant ability in that area, and to the point where I was winning competitions in the state and setting records and being asked to sing at state basketball tournaments, the national anthem, and professional baseball games and things like that. And
wow.
So I came to Nashville and ended up recording, so far I've recorded 3 records, and I've sung on some stages it's funny, I'm looking at one of them, I'm looking at a non-disclosure agreement on my wall right now, because they said, you can sing here, but you can't tell anybody. And it was one of those pipe dream situations, and I've sung on some symphony stages and different countries and things like that. And So what's fascinating though is that's not, the musical side of things for me is of course near and dear to my heart. It's a creative outlet. But, of course, based on your intro, right? I think I'm just a creative at heart. And
Mhm.
I like product development. I like, I had my first children's book published a few years ago. I like writing songs. But, you know, really my greatest good, my summum bonum, as it were, that Latin term, I think it is, is really to create spaces inside of people so that they can just better understand who they are and what lights them up, and I like to say what gives their goosebumps. And so that's something that I'm
Love
really
that.
passionate about lately. And I think, I'll be
Hmm.
honest though, I think that's born though out of a place where I was sorely lacking,
Mhm.
for
Really?
decades. I just lacked some self-awareness, and I had a really vague understanding of who I was and my purpose. And so, now that I've kind of lasered in on some of that stuff, life is a lot of twists and turns. We of course live in a world that's can be really brutal sometimes. At the same
Well,
time, I feel like I'm happier and
But
more fulfilled
you
than
took
ever.
you took that leap of faith and you followed that dream to
Yeah,
Nashville, and I'm sure that changed your whole life.
it
So,
it really did. There's no question about it. Yeah.
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 I'd love to hear more about that. But I'm also curious about the life of an entrepreneur, how the idea came about for StatGuard Plus, and
Yeah,
the obstacles and challenges that you faced creating it and selling it. And you talked about product development and marketing,
sure.
distributing it. That seems like such a so opposite of the
Right.
interior work that you've been doing.
Yeah, it is. So, what's interesting is I think that, of course, earlier in life, right? We're not necessarily, really super introspective and worried about personal development, that kind of thing. You get launched out into the world, and this might be a strange way to say it, but you're kind of in survival mode. It's like, I need to pay the bills. I need to
Yeah.
make my way in this world. So I think largely you're trying to find something initially that you're in a zone of competence, that you're kind of good at. I know I can do this type of thing. And so for years, I actually worked for a large telecom chain in facilities management
Oh,
and handled facilities for 5 different states. And it was honestly just a wonderful opportunity. But there was some flexibility too there with, that helped me or allowed me to sing and do things like that when I wanted. But then also, to create a bit of a side hustle. So the StatGuard Plus origin really came from my brother-in-law. He called me one day and he said, "David, where do I get a thermostat guard with a combination lock?" He said, "Everybody around here keeps losing that tiny key."
huh.
And of course,
Mhm.
I'm looking after 150 stores that have 3 thermostats in every one of them, and nobody can keep up with that little key. So I knew right away, I'm like, well, that's fascinating. So we started doing some research and found that, no one made that. So
Mhm.
we're the first ones in the world to have a stat guard with a combination lock. I mean, it's just a better mousetrap situation.
Wow.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it was, of course, you jump into the deep end of the pool because I didn't know anything about, prototyping and, AutoCAD and, product design and plastics injection molding and sourcing. Every single bit of it, including running a business, was new. I was a vocal major. And so,
Mhm.
kind of by definition, right? What's an entrepreneur? Somebody who just figures it out. And so just started surrounding myself with a lot of people that I thought I could draw from, some wisdom from, listening to podcasts, right? Reading books and things like that. And we got through that process of, of building a product. But
Mm.
here's the funny thing. This is where we kind of went wrong in the beginning, that the old adage or that saying, if you build it, they will come, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, right?
No,
If
you
people
gotta
don't
find them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if people don't know that you exist, good luck. Well, of course, we were like, who's not going to want this? So we ordered 7,000 units. And guess what? They sat in a garage for 3 years
Oh,
because
Mm.
we could not get attention from anybody. And, we were, of course, kind of dealing with fear at that point. You start getting rejection. And that person in the mirror becomes quickly your biggest obstacle. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was one heck of a journey to find, find the path. And of
You
course,
all obviously broke through, though. You found a
yeah,
path
yeah.
and you
So
made it happen.
right. And I ended up buying my brother-in-law out after a few years, and about a year after that, ended up getting into Home Depot. And even
Mm-hmm.
that was a tough one because you can't call Home Depot, right? I mean, literally, you
Right.
call them and it says, if you know your party's extension, dial it now. If you're a potential vendor, go on the website, click vendors. They want to know your financials and everything about you. I mean, it's just because you have a good product doesn't mean that you can do business with a retail giant. You might not have the know-how or the capital to stock the shelves one time, let alone
Yeah.
keep 20,000 units sitting around. And that was me. I had nothing. So we
Mm-hmm.
had to figure that out too.
Yeah.
What was the breakthrough there?
So yeah, this is just you know I'm grateful. I really believe God just opened up some doors. So I called my dad one day and I said, Dad, who's the most successful person that you know? And it was his friend George, who owned some restaurants and hotels and so on. And so I called George and told him kind of what was going on. And then he introduced me to a guy named Bob, who, I was literally, mowing our lawn out here, sitting on the riding lawnmower one afternoon, and the phone rang, and I had a conversation with Bob, and he said, "Hey, I'm actually going to Home Depot in a few weeks. I have 3 products in Home Depot." He said, "I'll just deliver it to the merchant, of that category." So he walked it in the front door and handed it to the merchant. And of course, they looked at it and they were like, "Boy, I wish we would have thought of this." And
Mm-hmm.
so, that started that process. And then, you know, truth of the matter is another moment was I literally am sitting on the tarmac, in Nashville, flying to do a concert. And, I get a call from Home Depot and they say, "Hey, we love this." Their question though is, "Can you do this?" And Richard Branson from Virgin Atlantic, he always said,
Mm-hmm.
"Say yes and figure it out."
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I lied like a rug, and I was like, "Yeah, of course I can do this. Yeah, no problem." Mr. Confident here.
And you
But
had 7,000 in your garage.
that's right. Yeah. And so the interesting thing there though is they ended up introducing me to a vendor that I then licensed my product to, and
Mm-hmm.
so they've been just a wonderful partner now for 7 years. And so they handle retail. They also help with manufacturing for my new Lockbox Pro that we're launching to the Pro channel for contractors and things like that. It's a different a thermostat guard with some different features on it. And it's just one of those things where, by definition, right? My friend Chris Kelso, by the way, he wrote the book Overcoming the Imposter, talking about imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And that book will change your life, by the way. I just absolutely love it. And in fact, you should probably have him on here. He's just fantastic. But
Mm.
Okay.
in his book, he says the you need to change your language around being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is not an imposter. If you feel that sensation, right? Of course, but you are an explorer, just
Ah,
like
Mm-hmm.
just like the people that were busting sod out west, right? Every day was a new day and a new challenge. Of course, you should feel insecure, but you're not
Well,
an imposter. You're an explorer.
and I was just going to ask you to tell us about the internal life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
sounds like a good segue for that.
Right, right.
You were
So,
just going to talk about
okay, now
that.
now do I have your permission to jump into the deep end of the pool here?
Yes.
please
Okay.
do.
Do you have a
So,
diving board?
that's right. So my friend Dr. Andy Garrett lives near you guys in California. He's a clinical psychologist in Newport Beach, and his grandfather Carl Karcher is the one who started Carl's
Hmm.
Jr. chain.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And Dr. Andy has been not only just a wonderful friend to me, but really, helped me build self-awareness. And so the deep end of the pool is this, right? Where do we get the word authenticity? It comes from the word author, right? We
Ah,
didn't make us. We didn't choose our eye color. We didn't choose our taste buds. We didn't choose our personalities. And how do we know that that's a law like gravity? Those of us who have children know that our kids come out of the gate hardwired. You can sense their sweet little essence when they're just weeks and months old, and how they're different from their sibling. And when they're 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old, they're not thinking about being authentic like we are, right? They're just doing their deal. My
They are
siblings,
authentic.
yeah,
Yeah.
my siblings were so different, and we were different from day one. What? What's my point here? When you understand, the author made you in a wonderful and precious and powerful way, and you start to identify, right? The word identity. You start to identify your characteristics. It's almost so simple it seems profound. You start to literally, in the English language, start writing down those things that describe you.
Mhm.
It's That's your identity. But what does that include? That includes, what do you think about, of course, spiritual things? What are your core values? What are your convictions, which are different, right? What are your virtues, which are different? And some people lump all that stuff together. I like to say, like I said earlier, what is it that gives your goosebumps? That's going to
Mhm.
be different for everybody. What is it that breaks your heart? What is it that just infuriates you? What is it that puts that lump in your throat, right? It's so when you collectively, what are your strengths? What motivates you? I mean, all those things. So Dr. Andy and now myself, we walk people through that framework so that they can just establish their identity and just write it down. But
Mhm.
it's through the lens of being asked the right questions in the right progression.
Love that.
And
Mhm.
he's the master at that. So anyway, my what is the internal life of an entrepreneur? So I'll be honest with you, much of my life, guys, I just wanted desperately to become somebody. I
Mm.
wanted a resume that looked like something, or I just at least wanted not to be a nobody. So
Mhm.
I had handed the keys to everybody around me. And I wanted my all of my accolades, whether even 7 years ago when I got into Home Depot, I thought, well, at least I'm somebody. And guess
Mm.
what? That didn't solve any problems. I
Mhm.
still felt like I was just, like, I'm missing something here.
Mm.
And what's really wonderful is that when I started to then, really get granular on what is it that lights David Osk up. What impact, what dent in the universe do I want to have on people? And I'm not talking my career. I'm not talking what I do to pay the bills, right? I am not a thermostat salesman, thermostat guard sales guy, right? I'm not a plumber. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. That's not who you are. Who you are is when you're with your wife and kids. Who you are is when you're with, your stranger at the gas station. Who you are is when, just everywhere you go. And when I started to establish and get really clear, like radical clarity on those things, I then started to understand, who I am and what's the difference between grit and resilience.
Yeah.
What is it that I'm willing to lean in a very intrinsic way, over a long period of time and do hard things, because what's on the other side of that hill is worth fighting for. And if
Mhm.
I get knocked down, right, resilient, not why am I getting up? It's who am I getting up to? It's that
Ah.
same it's that same plumb line that I've predetermined.
Is that how
And
you broke through all those obstacles that you faced?
I'll say some of them, but the truth of the matter is a lot of the obstacles and so many of the reasons for so many years that I pushed through is I was desperate to kind of become somebody, and I didn't want to look like an idiot. And
Mhm.
we're human, right? I get it. But largely, I am not looking for that fulfillment anymore. I'm bringing the fullest expression of who I am to any given day to experience fulfillment, but I'm not
Mm.
looking for it anymore. And there's a big difference. And if we're looking to our accomplishments, and what other people think of us, I mean, what a roller coaster ride. And
Yeah.
we can sum it up with people pleasing or things like that, but I didn't realize that's kind of what I was doing. I handed the keys to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, that's not to say, I want to make this really clear. And that's not to say that our identity is built in a silo, right? Like, for instance,
Mhm.
parents, we need to be raised. And,
Mhm.
what does that mean? Caused to rise in
Mm-hmm.
every single area of life. It's not just food and shelter and, okay, I love you, don't be so noisy. It's holding up a
Mhm.
mirror to your kids and saying, "Do you see what I see? I see something so precious and good and kind and noble in you, and I wanna help you put a name to those things." You know,
Mm,
and just kinda smile at them like that. And
that's
and
beautiful.
well, and it's
Mhm.
but I don't know about you guys, but I mean, my parents, they're wonderful people, and, they're kinda operating in, their life and based on what they knew at the time.
Mhm.
But I knew, of course, they loved me intensely, but with regards to purpose and identity, it was just kind of vague. It was work really hard, be really nice. If there's folding chairs that needed to be folded, you better be the first one folding chairs, and don't be a jerk and be really nice. But it
Mhm.
wasn't, David Osk, I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what lights you up. I want to know what causes your energy to rise. Let's get language around that stuff. And so
Yeah,
that
they
I can,
didn't know how to ask
yeah.
that. They didn't know.
No. No. And
They
most
weren't
people don't
raised with
now.
that. No.
Yeah, exactly. So that's,
Yeah.
it's funny. I'll be honest, guys, when I start talking about thermostat guards and this kind of thing, and then I start talking about, that whole part of life, that richer, deeper side of things, it almost seems a little funny. But guess what? I don't care,
Yeah.
because I'm really passionate about what I'm doing right now, and I'm so grateful that I have a way to provide for my family.
And
But that's
that's
that's not who I am.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, it really is uplifting to hear that because there's so many obstacles that stand in the way of what
yeah.
people think is success, of achieving it. And it sounds like you've broken through a lot of those just by being who you are, being more spiritual. I don't know if that's what you would say, but what would you say about somebody who is so worried about being someone and achieving success? What stands in their way?
Well, I mean, look, you look around our society right now. I mean, we're being marketed to on a very daily basis that you are not enough.
Mhm.
Period. To the point people are, just radically altering their bodies and figures, and I don't want to go into all that, but are you serious? You're gonna like encourage someone to say that you're not enough. You have to become somebody else. Can you imagine telling your children that? Hey, Parker. Hey, Kate. You know, you're you're just okay, but you're not enough. Would you work really hard and dig really deep so that you can be something that I approve of? And that's what we're
Hmm.
being told in every commercial, in every sitcom, in every movie right now. It's like we're not being celebrated from our birthright, that we're just precious and good and
Mhm.
kind and supported. And I feel like I'm on a mission right now, to help people understand that the author, the one who made them, is a good and wise king. And you're made in his image, right? I mean, male and female, right? And he made you just fabulous and fantastic, and you are fully resourced for what you need you know to do and become in this life. And whatever that is, I want to get behind it and cause that to flourish. And I want to help dads understand, that real clear mission. How do I love my kids? It's, my by the way, my favorite quote is by Benjamin Disraeli. He's the former PM of England back in the day, and he said, "The greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own." And
Mhm.
I'm like, is that not the definition of love? It's
Well,
like,
David, I have
wow,
another question for you.
yeah.
What about your life do you now realize was more helpful than you thought it would be?
Yeah, and I would say two things that
Anything?
stand out really, really well is this idea of just self-awareness, right? Just understanding who I am and who I'm not. What do I really value? Getting real clear on those things. But then also, surrounding yourself with, people that are, that I forget, Jim Rohn, I think back in the day, is the one who said, you become like the top 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, how
Mhm.
do we know that's a law like gravity? Because
Hmm.
those of us who are
Mhm.
parents, we don't want our kids caught up in the wrong crowd. I mean,
Mhm.
we will
Yeah.
fight tooth and nail to get our kids around kids who are good and kind and who are winning. But we
Mhm.
don't think about that for ourselves quite often, right? So
Hmm.
we become like the top 5 people you spend the most time with. And I'm not saying you can't have other acquaintances and people you have a good time with, but that inner circle needs to be, well chosen. Those people are your counselors. They're giving you counsel every time they open their mouth, and it needs to be
Mhm.
wisdom.
Yep,
Mm,
I agree.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, what makes you get up in the morning? What motivates you first thing in the morning?
Um, okay, I'm going to be really vulnerable here. Mornings are hard for me, and I just want to say that. I think it's a funny thing. I've struggled with some major anxiety in my life, and so I just want to say, I don't want to create some picture that I'm some hero here, right? Um, so mornings for me can be a real challenge. And so my mornings are spent largely on the greenway walking or at the gym working out. And then I spend a lot of time in meditation and prayer just to
Mm,
reorient my heart and my mind and be reminded. I feel like, do you guys know who C.S. Lewis is? The guy that
Mhm.
wrote
Oh,
the
yeah.
Narnia books and all those?
mhm,
I
Mhm.
love his humility because he's, in some ways, of course, will go down as one of the greatest, authors of the, last 200 years, really, and one of the greatest theologians of our time. And
Mhm.
he said, I love his humility. He said, David, and he in his book, he says, I am an atheist before my second cup of coffee. And I just think that's such a fun way, just to acknowledge humanity and like, man, I'm so human. And so what gets me up in the morning is the sun has risen and I get up
mm,
and I dig deep and I get the rudder, my heart and my mind pointed in the right direction. And that's really largely what is my purpose. So I oftentimes, and I have a mission and a purpose statement. At the same time, I oftentimes will write it out for that day just to make sure that my heart and my mind are connected. And it's so
mhm,
amazing. And you can tell even my energy as I'm talking with you guys, right? When I
Mhm.
start talking about what is super authentic to me, my energy just skyrockets. I feel like my hands are kind of shaking right now because I feel so passionate about this.
Mhm.
And by the way, that's another thing Dr. Andy says. He goes, you have found your authenticity, and he says, by following the clues, and your energy
Mhm.
rises, your heart starts to
Mhm.
dance, right? Your passion goes up. And how do you know you haven't found it? How do you know you're living a life that's not authentic to you? It's because you're apathetic, you're avoidant, you're maybe full of anxiety, you get angry really quickly, you feel like you're living a life you're
Mhm.
not supposed to, and things like that. And so when I, get my heart and my mind focused in the right direction, it causes my energy to skyrocket. And I know I've found my unique purpose.
Well,
mm.
then can you tell us a little bit about your mastermind groups and
Yes,
the purpose they serve for you and for others?
absolutely. So, about, let's see here, 6 years ago, I joined ISI. So it just stands for Iron Sharpens Iron. And
Oh, I wondered what that was.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
so what's really great is, again, you become like the top five people you spend the most time with, right? I mean, I just think that's just super clear. But when you find a group of, business owners, entrepreneurs and stuff who are literally putting their money where their mouth is to have a virtual board of directors, as it were, for their business, but then
Mhm,
also the same men to be a band of brothers for your personal life. That's really powerful. And so basically our goal is to help one another win in every single area, whether that's parenting, marriage, fitness, running your business, marketing, supply chain management. I mean, you can go down the line. There's no stone unturned. So we
mm,
get together twice a year. Next week we're having our spring event, and then we meet weekly on a Zoom call just to to yeah
Oh, every
mastermind.
week?
And yeah, it's very intentional. So I'm talking with someone in our mastermind group, almost on a daily basis.
Mm.
are
So
they all men?
this particular group is, yeah. So it's since we talk about really personal things, might be awkward to have, someone's wife in the room, that kind of thing. So this particular
Mhm.
group there are a bunch of other masterminds out there that are not, but typically they're just business, focused.
Mm,
Mhm. That's
yeah.
good.
So yeah.
Yeah, it would be great if to get a woman's group like that together because I don't really know of any women's group that stick together just to help each other rise
Right.
and become more than they
Well,
can
I
be.
we do know a women's group, eWomen Network, has a
Yes,
okay.
focus like
that's
that.
true. eWomen
Yeah.
Network does that.
eWomen Network
Yeah.
is a very large organization. They do
Okay.
that. They do that
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
it's
Women.
isn't it fascinating though? It's on a kind of a primal level, right? Where, like the mob, when you're in a mob, right, you have more power. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you get together again with like-minded people who want to cause each other to win. I mean, it's amazing the horsepower. I think it's a Stanford study. So picture this. They asked people standing at the bottom of a hill to rate the slope of the hill in degrees and then the distance to the top. And 90% of the time, the people who were standing alone rated the slope steeper and the height higher than those
Oh,
standing in a group. And it was just,
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
isn't that interesting that when you're
Mm-hmm.
standing with someone or, four or five people, everybody almost, statistically in the margin of error, almost everybody said that the steep was less and the height was lower, which
How
is really fascinating.
interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're pack animals.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, on a different note, using that
Hmm.
word, we'd love to hear about your music. Have
Okay.
you have you been singing all your life? I guess you said you had when you were a child. And what would you say are your top musical experiences?
Oh, man. Um, let's see. Yeah. So basically, yeah, since I don't remember a day that music really wasn't front and center in my family, especially since my mom was a music teacher. She just retired a few years ago. But my top musical experiences, um, wow, I'll try to mention this non-disclosure agreement without giving it away. So there's a really, really famous golf course. I'll just leave it at that. And I got to sing for the members of that particular club 4 times on New Year's
Mm-hmm.
Eve, and
Oh,
stand before some of the richest people on the planet and get a standing ovation.
wow.
And my daughter is a violinist. She's a junior in high school, but she's the concert master at Vanderbilt Children's Orchestra. And
Fabulous.
she even came with me twice, and she got a standing ovation. And so that was pretty neat. I remember one night standing on the Skirmerhorn Symphony stage here in Nashville, and I recorded a new version of the Lord's Prayer that my friend Chris Eaton wrote. And Chris, if you go on YouTube, there's a video of Chris Eaton performing at Royal Albert Hall in London, his version of that. And
Mm.
I got to
Mm-hmm.
sing that antiphonally with the choir, like facing me. They were in the balcony at the back of the
Mm-hmm.
auditorium in the Skirmerhorn. And I got to stand all by myself on that symphony stage and sing that with the choir.
Oh, what an
And
honor.
Oh,
that was
great.
uh, that was a moment I'll never forget, especially when your wife and your kids and everybody are standing there watching. And um,
Mm-hmm.
Well, some
man,
people have compared
yeah.
your voice to Josh Groban's.
Well, it's kind of I appreciate that. In fact, when Andrea Bocelli was here in Nashville a few months ago, I was asked to sing backup for him, and
Wow.
Good. Did you get
it
to
was
do it?
funny. Well, no, because they asked me so late. I already had dates booked, and I just couldn't be there. But
Oh, too
anyway,
bad.
yeah,
Well,
and
who are your musical influences?
I've got a wide variety. This is going to sound kind of funny. I love Pavarotti. I just his voice is absolutely powerful and virile and stunning. But I also love like Journey and listening to the
Mhm.
power ballads and rock music. In fact, I recorded oh, what's the song here? It's been a while back. Open Arms by Journey. I
Mhm.
recorded that in Italian, and I think I'm the first and only one to have recorded Open Arms in Italian.
Oh, have fun.
So, but
Wow.
I love
I've
Steve
got
Perry.
I've got some music on iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. So
Oh,
Gee.
fabulous. Tell us about a few of the songs you've composed and what inspired them.
yeah, so let me think here. I remember um, I- Chris Eaton. Of course, I had never met him. I'd been a fan of his writing. He's written hits for Amy Grant and Vince Gill and Janet Jackson and Donna Summer and you name it. He's British, I sent him an email, and I said, I'm doing a concert at the Brentwood Country Club on Valentine's. If you and your wife are in town, I will have tickets for you at the front desk. And he never responded, and he showed up. So I hopped up on the stage, and he and his wife were sitting in the front row. And that next day, that night, he asked me to write songs with him, which was just a complete pipe dream. And we wrote a song called "What a Perfect Day." So on the last record, there are 3 or 4 that he and I wrote together. And the song "What a Perfect Day" is actually the title track. And yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at that. That you can go check it out later. But it's a song I'm incredibly proud of.
Can you sing the first
Thanks.
3 bars of it a cappella?
I will.
I don't know how it'll read on the podcast, but we can try.
Well, let me
Should be
try.
fine.
So it goes, what a perfect day, a million miles of blue, the sun and moon together in the same sky, and not a cloud in sight. It's all for me and you.
Love
Oh,
it. Bravo.
beautiful, beautiful. Oh,
Yeah, that's great.
So,
Love that.
thank you.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. It is a perfect day. So tell me something, or tell our audience what personal awareness it can do when you're singing professionally and
Yeah.
when you sing to yourself.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I really feel like that personal awareness is, this idea of, what impact do I want to have on these people, right? I mean, the entire point of life, it's relationships, right? The rest is just a context. The entire point of life, it's relationships. And so I'm the guy who does a concert, and I'll tell the person at the back, like, please turn the lights on. I want to see eyes. I don't want bright lights in my face and feel like I'm having a rehearsal. I want that human connection. And part of that is because I literally feel like when I'm singing, I'm giving something away. Like I just want to leave it all on the table, as it were, and slide into home plate when I'm done giving a concert by giving them, my heart, giving them my essence, and singing songs that cause them to, squeeze the hand of their mate, next to them, or hug their kid a little harder, and pass on, love to one another. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Where uh, what is, I mean, of course, love is, right, patient and kind, and the various aspects of keeps no record of wrong, and all that kind of thing. But it's also a metaphysical, who that we pass back and forth. And I really believe that that's something that is I don't know, it sounds kind of weird to say it, but it's harnessed, if you will, by my willingness to get up and being willing to give a part of myself away. And I want someone to walk away thinking, that wasn't a concert. I didn't hear pretty music. I was changed. I want to live my life in a more kind and virtuous and and noble way. That's me, right? I'm not saying that's everybody, right? Some people just they need to live out their purpose in whatever their craft is, right? But for me personally, I want to give something away so that they have another tool in their belt, or another awareness that causes them to look up or look within. So I choose my songs, not only the text, but the lyrics and so on, but the melodies that can be kind of a can opener to somebody's mind and soul.
That sounds great, David. And what would you like our listeners to have as a takeaway today?
You know what? That's a great question. I would say I wrote. There's a song on my record, and it's called "Just Once,"
Yeah.
and it's really kind of about broken love. A little bit of loss, and it's kind of from the viewpoint of someone who is just saying, just once, I just want you to say my name. Just once, I just want you to hold me. It's like it's this idea of lost love, or it's not reciprocated. And I would just encourage you to go, search David Osk just once and listen to that song, and let it speak to something that's wounded in you that might need to be healed a little bit.
Thank
Healing.
you.
Thank you. We all need healing in so many aspects of our lives. Thank you, David.
Sure.
Our guest today on Late Boomers has been David Osk, entrepreneur, but creator and entrepreneur and creator of StatGuard Plus, but also the creator of a much broader way of living. And he's a singer-songwriter and also a man who is very passionate about helping people grow and overcome obstacles and finding their unique purpose in life. And you can reach David at his website, statguardplus.com and davidosk.com. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
And we're grateful to our listeners, and we want to ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Late Boomers Podcast, where you can watch the video version of this podcast. Also, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and give us a 5-star review, please. We're on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. We always strive to inspire and entertain you. Thanks again so much, David.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.